All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to Chicago Sports Tracks, Monsters of the Madhouse. Thank you for being with us today, folks. This is Clete Campbell sitting in for our fearless leader, Brandon Hyatt, who's on a top secret family vacation that has something to do with mice, big castle, some guy named Disney. But while Brandon's away, we're going to go around the horn with our Monsters of the Madhouse expert panel. We've got the great Steve Weekly, Kyle Bolton, Matt Cooper all joining us. Fellas, thanks so much for being here tonight. And guys, I tell you what, I'm coming to you from Asbury, Iowa, just about 15 miles down the road from what's going to be the biggest event for Iowa of the year, or probably of all time in terms of baseball, you could say that. As tomorrow night, the Field of Dreams in Dyersville, Iowa, host the Chicago Cubs and Cincinnati Reds for the second edition of Major League Baseball's Field of Dreams game. And guys, to put this in perspective, for this state, which as you know doesn't have a pro sports team, this is like a Super Bowl, a Final Four, a Daytona 500, a World Series. It's all put into one. Like all the state's media, probably a crowd of over 50,000 are going to descend on this little town of 4,000 people, guys. This town is in the Chicagoland, it wouldn't even be on the map. It's so small. But because of this magical baseball mecca that is the Field of Dreams, it has become baseball central for the world for the next 24 hours. Major League Baseball, guys, is going all out for this thing. They've got this huge festival downtown Dyersville. They're bringing in big name country music acts. They're going to have big viewing party downtown. And then, of course, they've got this 10,000-seat stadium that they've constructed for the game. And, of course, this is just the tip of the iceberg of what they want to do with this complex. It's now owned by Frank Thomas, the Hall of Fame for first baseman for the White Sox. And Frank has this dream of creating a ballpark heaven that will be this mega youth baseball and softball complex that will bring teams from all over the country. And so he's pumping $150 million into this thing. And, you know, when we go back to the Field of Dreams, like the year 2025, 2026, it's going to be crazy how much different this is going to be from what it is today. So it's really kind of a cool thing that we've got going on here. But I kind of want to get your fellas' perspectives, guys, as we go into this game tomorrow night. As we've been talking, you know, on previous podcasts, this is a rebuilding year for the Cubs. They made no secret about that. They're 45-65 going into tomorrow night's game. We've seen some good things from these youngsters. Justin Steele with a solid 6-inning performance today. Could I get your thoughts, fellas? What have you liked from what you've seen from this young Cubs team this year? And what has given you major concern about this big teardown and rebuild plan going forward?
Well, I guess I'll go first.
Yeah.
The non-Cubs fan over here, since I'm a White Sox fan. I'll give a couple perspectives too, and I'll give a perspective too as far as a Reds side, because I lived in Cincinnati for 7 years. So the Cubs play the Reds tomorrow, and I saw something interesting earlier today that I think could relate to like a lot of people for this game tomorrow. But I've actually watched quite a bit of Cubs games this year, but I think the problem is I don't think you ever know what you're going to get with a rebuild. You could say you got the prospects lined up, or you can make the trades, and your farm looks good. But is it all going to pan out? Do you have the right sources that's going to happen? I mean, I think they did the right things, but I think they made the mistake with not trading Wilson Contreras. And I think there's a definite need out there, because I looked at some of the other catchers that were dealt at the deadline, and I'm like, so the guy goes from Boston to Houston. Vasquez, is that his name? Vasquez, the catcher.
Yeah.
Pretty good catcher. I mean, I would like to have him on my team, especially if I'm making a push run. But is he better than Wilson Contreras? I don't think he is. And I'm like, so the Astros got him, but the Cubs couldn't make the deal for that. So I hope that doesn't come back and hurt them at the end, because you're right when you said that earlier, when you're talking about Steele and some of the other guys that they have playing this year and some of the other guys that they've called up. Because this is the time right now. This is the time for August and September for some of these young guys to come up and really make a name for themselves, because there's nothing to play for right now. So I would think it's headed in the right direction, but I just hope with some of these trades, I mean, I know you still have Ian Happ for another year too, but I really hope that not trading these guys and trying to get more players and more prospects, because the more you have, the better you can hit on some of them, is not going to come back and hurt them in the end.
Yeah, yeah, it's a good point, Matt. I mean, look what they did last year. It was one. If you can make the case, that was one of the biggest trade deadline fire sales in baseball history with what they gave up, and the jury is still too out. We don't. It's way too early to know. Judge everything we got back for. Giving up the talent we did, and Anthony Rizzo, and Javi Baez, and Chris Bryant, and Kyle Schwarber. Right now that it's incomplete, but the thing about it is they took the core of a world championship team, blew it up. Probably, you can make the case that the timing was right with that, because all of those guys had kind of plateaued and were kind of regressing. I think the question for this team now is, how far are they going to? Is this going to be a 5-year rebuild, a 7-year rebuild? I mean, what do they have to do? I think to accelerate that progress, where this team could potentially be a 500 club next year. Kyle, from what you've seen of them, where would you say this Cubs team is in the big picture for this rebuild?
This is a little out of my wheel. I'm not too much of a ball, but they've gone on the win streaks for me, right? And it's games like this, you have to win like the big games. Like that's gonna be an exciting game, right? We'll Field of Dreams.
Yeah. It's a great vehicle for him. Steve, what have you seen? What have you liked? What have you disliked from this year's Cubs team?
Well, I like to see that they're playing the young guys and trying to see what they've got, even though there's not a lot there. Right now, Contreras is probably gone at the end of the year.
Yeah.
The free agent. So coming back next season, the only thing you're really going to have is Nico Horner and Ian Happ.
Yeah.
That right there tells you, boy, oh boy. We're actually, I got the feeling we're actually at the beginning of the fall down the hill more than we are at even climbing our way up.
Yeah. I hear you. That you look at the pitching staff, it's going to be Kyle Hendricks and just a parade of 24, 25-year-olds that have shown no consistency so far. And as we flip, let's head across town, guys. Let's talk about not seeing any consistency. The Chicago White Sox remain a 500 team here with about 6-7 weeks left in the regular season. You would think this is the time that this team would actually just hit fifth gear, that drop the hammer, get into a prime playoff position. They have the easiest schedule in Major League Baseball over the second half. But I guess we could go around the horn, starting with you, Kyle. What is holding this team back? Why have we know the injuries have been there, but it just boggles my mind that this team cannot get going here and get on any kind of run, against this mediocre competition.
Again, I'm not too caught up on my baseball just yet. I'm in the next couple weeks. I'm hoping to be a little bit more.
That's all right.
You got to remember, it's hockey night in the Canada right now. So
that's true. Absolutely. Yeah. And you've saved yourself from watching a lot of bad baseball, Kyle. That's for sure. The great Caleb James has joined us, folks, here on Monsters of the Madhouse. Caleb, how you doing? Thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, doing great. Hey, thanks, Clete. I'm watching the Sox now. They're down 1-0 to the Royals, almost to make your point about mediocre baseball, not able to take advantage of the lowly Royals, who as pitiful as you might have described the Cubs, like the Royals are certainly there, and it seems like they played down to their competition. A lot goes into that, but yeah, they certainly play down to their competition. And on top of that, they can't stay healthy.
Yeah.
We got Tim Anderson is out for like the next, basically the rest of the season, unless things go really, really well with his rehab. And so I think we've had one day all season with kind of that killer top 7 that everybody thought was just going to dominate, and certainly the division, and take us deep into the playoffs. And now we're just hoping to win the division.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. When you take Tim Anderson, Caleb out of that lineup, and then basically Tony's going to be throwing darts. I think just trying to find a leadoff man because so much is started by the All-Star shortstop. Matt, the one thing that's boggled me with this team is like nobody expects this team to have to go out and put up a 10, 12, 14 game winning streak, something crazy. But I thought going in at the very least they would play 667 baseball, where they would win more series than they lost. From your perspective, watching them, Caleb touched on the injuries, but what's been the biggest reason in your mind, Matt, that this team just hasn't been able to put any kind of streak together, any kind of momentum?
There's a couple of things that I watched this year. I mean, we could talk about injuries too, and they have. And listen, you're not going to be the team you were last year when you've had the amount of injuries that they've had. However, there's a couple of things that have stood out to me this year. First off is our starting pitching. Lucas Giolito has not been an ace.
No.
I think that's one of the most important things that we can point out here. We're relying on him to be an ace, and we've seen that in the past of what he can do. But I mean, his ERA is well over 5 right now, and he's been an average, a below average pitcher this year. So when you count on somebody like him to go in there and be your ace, and he's not, that's already going to take some wins away right there. Lance Lynn, you could say the same. Now I know he was hurt too, but he hasn't been the same pitcher when he came back. So those are the couple of guys that I look at in the starting rotation as to why that is. And then obviously our offense is just inconsistent. Earlier we were talking about the Cubs and the rebuild. There's a couple of players that stick out to me too from the White Sox, like Yohan Moncada. I mean, we got him from a trade, and you were keeping your fingers crossed if this guy's going to hit or not. And the trend here the last couple of years has not been good for him. And again, a guy that I don't know, a lot of people, he had COVID really bad, which I'm not going to take that away. Listen, I had COVID the first time around, and I was sick as a dog, and I still don't feel the same for 2 years later. But he hasn't been the same player, and I think you got to look at some of their other position players. That just Tim Anderson, he came back from an injury. He wasn't good. I mean, he just went on the DL for 6 weeks, but let's face it here, he hasn't been good since he's come back. And all that together with the inconsistency, our manager, I question some of his stuff that he does, and put that all together, and that's why we're average.
I think you're absolutely right. Lewis Robert, the same thing, more than two. I think Moncada more than anything else, because he was the guy that this team thought they were going to build around for the next 5 to 10 years. He had superstar written all over him. And so what you've had this year, you've had Jose Abreu doing what he does so well, carrying the load, putting this team on his back to try to make sure that they can sneak a game out of a series here, or take possibly 2 out of 3 from the Guardians here. But yeah, it's been Abreu and pretty much nothing else in terms of offensive consistency for this team. And guys, I'll go on record right now. There's not. I don't think there's a chance in hell that this team makes the playoffs, even with that third wild card, because they haven't shown that they can go and consistently win series. I mean, that's what it's going to take down the stretch against Major League Baseball's, weakest schedule, as you said, Matt. I mean, they've just been playing down to their competition, and I see them doing that for the next 6-7 weeks. So, gosh, I wish I had better news for Sox Nation, but we have to keep it real, be realistic here. So with that being said, let's move over to up the interstate a little bit to Lake Forest, to Hallis Hall, where we have another team in turmoil of transition, trying to find out where they are sitting as we sit now less than 72 hours away from their preseason opener. That would be our beloved Chicago Bears. But let's start with the elephant in the room. We were talking about this, Steve, in our pre-show meeting. Right now, Roquan Smith, for all intents and purposes, looks like he's out the door. He's demanded a trade. He's really gotten to going nowhere with Ryan Poles. The Bears, very aggressive and very brash first-year GM. Steve, how do you see this situation playing out? Is Roquan Smith gone, or is there any chance that these two sides can come together and find the common ground and get a deal done here?
Well, I think they have to come together.
Yeah.
First off, Roquan, the only reason you would trade that player is if somebody says, okay, here's 2 first-round picks for him.
Yeah.
If you don't get 2 first-round picks for him, it's at absolute best a wash. Mm-hmm. And that's if the first-round pick, if somebody even offers him a first-round pick, if he is equivalent to Roquan. I don't think that's going to happen. The best I think they'll get offered is a high second or really late first.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, yeah, he's a 2-time Pro Bowler, but he's been a second-team Pro Bowler last couple of years. He's been wildly inconsistent at times. 25 years old, due to make $9.7 million in the last year of his rookie deal. But yeah, I agree with you too. I mean, the rest of the league knows where the Bears are. They're not going to overpay for a player like this.
No,
I can see maybe a second rounder, maybe a fourth, but they're not going to get. Poles is smoking something a little bit stronger than your usual weed if he thinks he's going to get 2 first rounders.
There's no way that's going to happen.
Yeah, but the disheartening thing for us too is you have a new front office, but it's the same type of Bears mismanagement where the Bears just don't have good chemistry or player relations with their players, particularly their star players like Roquan Smith. And that's really kind of disheartening for me as we try to build this nucleus, as we try to turn the page from, the last 4 years of the Matt Nagy era, where really, in terms of everybody being on a different page, that's what defined the Nagy era. And that's why that team was never able to be anything more than a 500 team, really, after the league figured them out in that first season, that first playoff season. Kyle, as we sit here today, where do you think that the Bears are in terms of what kind of season can they expect, in this rebuild? Are we looking at a 4-13 team, a 3-14 team? Is this a team that's just going to be taking its lumps every week as they try to find out who can play at this level and who can't?
When Poles and everybody first started coming together and got hired players and stuff, I was looking at it very optimistically.
Yeah.
And it was the same thing. Brandon did a couple shows before talking about the schedule and the strength of schedule and how, I was very optimistic looking into it. One of the things I thought would be more certain of the offseason was signing Roquan Smith. And now that they're kind of in trouble, it's now I don't really know.
Yeah.
I'd like to see them. I think they can still go 500. But without Roquan, it'll just be next man up, and I'm really not sure who would take that spot.
Yeah, and I just don't know what the depth. I don't think you have the Pro Bowl caliber depth where you can have a next man up situation, have somebody step into that position. And what's so important, because he covers so much ground, he's really kind of that rover that you need, kind of spearheading your offense or your defense. I'm sorry. And we're already talking about a defense that has lost so many vocal leaders and key playmakers. Matt, where do you see this team right now? If you had a kind of, ballpark project what they're going to do over these 17 games, is this a team that has any hope, with everything they're facing right now? 4 of the top 5 receivers out, an offensive line that's in complete flux and turnover. What kind of Bears team are we going to be looking at this year, man?
Ooh. It's funny you say that because earlier in the day they released their depth chart of all their players and stuff like that, and I looked over it and I'm like, oh boy, there's gonna be a lot of holes in this team this year. You don't realize it until you look at it and see how they really tore it down, where they're trying to go from here. Which I understand that. I know what they're trying to do. They saw what happened last year. They saw what they needed to do, and they're like, okay, we got to make these changes. We got our own new people in here. So this year, I think it all depends on our quarterback. I think it depends on his next step. I want to see how he develops. I mean, that's how I'm watching the Bears this year, is how Justin Fields develops. Everything else, like the Roquan situation, I love Roquan Smith. I think he's a great player. But if he's asking, they're saying, you never know what's true or not. But if he's asking for $20 million, he's not a $20 million player. And if the new people that we have in charge thinks that we need to trade him to get more draft picks, I'm all for it. I'm like, I'll let them do what they need to do to fix this team for the future. Unless it's Justin Fields, I feel like Justin Fields, and then it's like everybody else, and we're just kind of seeing what we got. And I also feel like we got some of the plug hole players that are trying to prove themselves, and some are probably going to hit, some are probably going to miss. I looked at our wide receivers. I think I said this the last time we were talking with all of us, that I looked at our wide receivers, and I'm like, I see a bunch of number 4s and number 5s and guys that are, again, they're just going out there and just
Yeah, man. Yeah, you look at that. There's not a 1,000-yard receiver to be had. In that current receiving core. Unfortunately, I do agree with you on the Smith situation. If they have a plan B, if they have a backup plan, and Poles is able to turn this around and get, a first rounder, mid to high first rounder, or some kind of value, then that it won't be a wash. But right now, I see a team with a GM in over his head, a GM who's playing a hard ball when he doesn't have to. And like you said too, I mean, this team is full of young players that are hungry and journeymen, but just no cohesiveness. I think one big success story, if with this offensive line, if Justin Fields can play 17 games, I think that would be a big win, no matter what the regular season record is. Caleb, as you look at them, how do you project this Bears team in 2022?
Well, I think the NFL right now is such a quarterback-driven league. Yeah. I think, you got a lot to be excited about in Justin Fields. I think that's worth tuning in every Sunday if you got a quarterback that you're rooting for, developmental or otherwise. And I think there's a lot of reason to think that he could be, more than developmental, and at this stage in his career. And I think you have, you see, the guy in Baltimore, took the league by storm. And I think, like nobody really saw that coming. I mean, he wasn't, certainly athletic. They just didn't see, you never see that kind of having such impact on the league. So I think anything's happened. Anything's liable to happen with that offense. As long as you got that quarterback, I think you're right to be concerned about the defense, and I think defense is where you win championships, but you win close games, you get into the playoffs with your defense. So, man, I'm a huge fan of Roquan Smith. I think, you gotta find a way to salvage that situation. I don't know if it's possible at this point, but you got to try.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's something that, in my opinion, has got to be wrapped up in the next week or so here, because we're also just become more of a distraction, more of a team chemistry issue as the closer you get to opening day. Talk about nothing coming easy for the Bears. Go ahead, Steve.
Sorry. One thing with them today, they took him off the PUP list.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that was a great idea, because that's Poles ratcheting up.
Yeah.
Right now I say, okay, it's salvageable, even if it takes, 2 games into the regular season, it's still salvageable. What I'm worried about is now that they took him off the PUP list, they can start finding him.
Yeah, that's true. That's very good. The second they lay that first fine on him, forget it. Take what you could get for him, because you just ruined it. Absolutely, Steve. That's a good point. Do you know with the CBA from a few years ago? I know it's really pricey. What is the daily fine for players who under contract holding out now? They increased it quite a bit.
Well, I know I was listening to Habarkus earlier, and if I know if he holds out for like the entire preseason and like the first, I forget how many games, he could be fined. If they start tomorrow finding him, he could be fined upwards of $1.6 million.
Wow. Yeah, and let's not forget, everyone, this is a Pro Bowl player in the walk year of his contract who's trying to prove that he's a $20 million a year guy, as Matt was saying. So, both of these teams are playing high stakes poker here. And I agree with you. I just don't think Smith can afford to take that chance.
Well, I'm sorry, guys. He wants to be a $20 million a year guy. You got 2 years before you have to pay. Jesus, I'm showing my age. Our quarterback.
Yeah, Fields.
Fields. Yeah. Thank you. Goodness gracious. Sorry about that. I'm 98, so give me a break. You've got 2 years before you've got to pay him. They're going to be They're going to have $100 million in cap space. You can't afford to pay him $20 million, because he'll be the highest paid linebacker in the league for a season.
Yeah.
That's it.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the issue?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's so imperative for them to lock him up now. Get that taken care of. That's one less contract you have to worry about next year. And like you said, I mean, they're going to be feeling like Jeff Bezos, in the free agent market next year with over 100 million. They should be able to go out and any need that they have, that's a pressing need, be able to address it. But this is what worries me about Poles, guys. And I want to take you back to back to the decision of the head coaching decision. The Bears brought in a whole bunch of people. They brought in Bill Polian, a lot of experts, and they had a committee, that had a recommendation in place. Now, it was Ryan Poles. Ryan Poles, the GM, was hired first. And, you always want to have the GM be able to pick his guy for coach. They were recommending, though, if you remember right, they were recommending him go with Matt, as the head coach. They were recommending him going with Jim Caldwell, the former Colts and Lions coach. And he wanted to be his own man. He said, this is my team. No, I'm not going with your guy, who everybody was recommending. This offensive-minded coach who they really thought could do great things with Justin Fields in his sophomore season. He said, instead, no, this is my guy. I'm going to go with this defensive-minded coach. And right then, you knew two things. Number one, you knew, this was going to be Ryan Poles' team. He was going to do it his way. But number two, you also knew that your new GM was very, very stubborn. And is this going to be an issue? Is Poles, could he be an issue going forward in terms of this team being able to put out hopefully a championship contender down the road?
I think it goes either way. I think too. Well, first off, the first thing I'll say, living down here in Louisville, tons of Colts fans are down here. It's Colts. It's Colts country down here. There's nothing. There's Colts everything. Colts fans loved Eberflus as a coach, as a defensive coordinator for the Colts, and they'll tell you that too. They'll tell you about even though their defense lost their game last year, their defense didn't play good against the Jaguars. However, all the Colts fans you talk to down here that are the diehard Colts fans that watch on a week, they loved him as a coach. So I'll take that as a positive, and got my fingers crossed that hopefully that will pan out. I think as a Bears fan though too, I don't ever get excited about a head coach anymore, because we've had so many of them that have not worked out. And to me, it's just a wait and see approach. And I mean, it sounds like he's doing some good things right now, and it's going to definitely be a year away before they can really start putting their players in place. And I think the other part of this with the Roquan Smith thing, I also wonder. We all know he's a good player and he can make plays. But I also wonder at the same time, too, is if they're thinking in the back of their head, okay, we don't necessarily need this guy in our system. We would love to have him. He's a great player, but if this is the type of stuff, this is not our guy. If this is what he's going to put up, we can wait until next year when we have our salary cap money, and then we have more draft picks, and when we can go find somebody else that better suits our defense.
Yeah, that's a fair point, too. And I see that perspective, too, if they're looking at there, too. And, obviously with the way that he's acting now, trying to negotiate without an agent, being unreasonable, it seems like, in terms of what his valuation of his talent, his compensation should be. I do see Ryan's point on that. But Caleb, can you talk about what you've seen from Poles so far? Has he given you the confidence that he's the right guy to build this roster into hopefully a championship contender over the next few years?
I don't know. To me, it doesn't feel like the Bears way, right? You're talking about the home of Dick Butkus, Mike Singletary, Wilbur Marshall, Brian Urlacher. You can go on for forever. And now we're talking about the value of a linebacker. I don't know. It seems like the Bears way would be to have to get that stud linebacker, but maybe they know something we don't, about what is the value of a linebacker these days, which I feel like is probably best debated with Roquan Smith contract. You've seen it with running backs, where hey, having a stud running back isn't really all that it used to mean, and maybe having a stud linebacker isn't what it used to mean. Maybe you'd rather have, good DBs and offensive tackles. There it's just the hierarchy of the positions are maybe different than what they used to be. So I think it's an unorthodox move for, the Chicago mindset in my mind. But and I don't know, maybe I wouldn't have the guts to make it as a GM, and I think it's a gutsy move, to say, hey, look, we don't value linebackers like that here in with the Bears anymore.
Yeah, you bring up great points too. This team has always been built on great linebackers, and whenever this defense has been elite, you've had a Hall of Fame caliber linebacker, as you said, Caleb, be at the heart of it. Those are some of the issues that really have me concerned. Other than the elephant in the room we haven't addressed that right now, that Steve Weekly is right now the number 2 receiver on the depth chart for these Bears. He did break out a 7.9 40 for what we heard in camp today. Steve, how are you feeling, and how is your chemistry with Justin coming along?
Well, it's I think Moody's going to be a good receiver, but I've got better hands.
Yeah.
So, it's I get Caleb's point, but okay, linebackers, off the ball linebackers are not as prestigious as they once were. I think that's hogwash. You need, with how pass happy offenses are now, you need a guy who can cover this, that middle zone. With him being a weak, he's going to have weak side linebacker. He's going to have flat to curl. That takes athletic ability. So it's more of a premium than they're putting on it, I think.
Well, without question. I mean, you've got to be able to be a great zone read linebacker, and with this system too, with as fast as they want to run in this new defense, you need to have that guy be able to rove over, and obliterate a play, within seconds, and past great Bears, linebacker, of course, you look at Lance Briggs, you look at, of course, as Caleb was talking about, Iron Mike, all of that, they have that. Now, if the hardware they're playing is they're saying Roquan Smith isn't that guy. But the thing about it is, with this new defense, is that's what they've been asking him to do. I mean, that was the plan, right? That he was going to be that guy. He was going to be the face of the defense. So, yeah, it's crazy.
I bring up the comparison to running backs, right? Because maybe in the last decade we've really seen the specialty of the first and second down back, and definitely like a third down back.
Yeah.
And maybe 10 years ago you didn't, you loved it if you had like a 3 down back, And now I feel like we're turning the page on the 3 down linebacker, Yeah.
The game has changed without question, Caleb, and it's running so fast. But it goes back to, I think, the point that Matt brought up. It's next man up. Who would be next man up in terms of being a playmaker at that level? Right now, there's nobody that we're seeing, and so that's the biggest question, the biggest worry I think we have. But
right now, the guy backing him up was just played in the USFL. So
yeah.
Right.
Which is just a little bit step up coming, from the Mid-American Conference, I would say, of college football. But for all these troubles, guys, I guess there's one thing we can say about a Bears front office. At least we're not the Browns front office right now. Okay, as bad as things are, they could be worse. Really quickly, let's hit on this, guys. I have never in my life, been a sports fan for, closing in on 40 years now. I've never seen a team self-impose just pain on themselves like what the Cleveland Browns have done with this Deshaun Watson situation. The commissioner now has appealed the initial 6-game suspension. It looks like he's asking for a full season. They've invested a guaranteed, I think it's $245 million fully guaranteed in him. In all your years of watching sports, have you ever seen a more bungled quarterback situation like the one they have in Cleveland?
I haven't. I mean, I was surprised that there were even a couple of teams that wanted to take on that headache.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy to me because listen, I know Baker Mayfield was just okay last year. He wasn't a great quarterback, but he wasn't awful. But you could tell that the writing was on the wall, that they were looking to see what else they wanted to do. But to bring in that situation, because I was talking to my girlfriend about it. My girlfriend, by the way, is a diehard Steelers fan. She's from Pittsburgh, so she hates she flat out told me, she goes, I'm going to go from hating the Bengals the most to everybody's going to hate the Browns now. So we watched a lot of Browns games. But we were talking about this. She's like, I just don't understand that the Browns, they have a good team around everywhere. They have a great defense. They have one of the probably one top 5 best players in Myles Garrett, and they got a good defense. They got Nick Chubb. They're solid all the way around. And then you bring that in, and now you're going to risk like losing him for a year, and you're going to go to Jacoby Brissett. Like you're going to waste all the good talent that you have on that team for this.
Yeah, I know that's the thing about it. You know, I've heard it termed that he's a chemistry cancer. You know, with all the distractions he's brought into that training camp. And like you said too, I mean, Baker Mayfield was the definition of Webster Marion's definition of mediocre last year. He was playing with a torn labrum in his non-throwing shoulder, but you got the heart, and you got a guy that you knew was going to be eligible every week. And yeah, Jacoby Brissett is the definition of a journeyman. The one thing that if I'm Cleveland, to maybe try to salvage this season, fellas, why not kick the tires on Jimmy Garoppolo out in San Francisco? The asking price right now isn't much. I mean, I think could land him for maybe a couple mid-rounders, or maybe a mid-rounder and a late. I mean, what do you think, Kyle? Is that something that would make sense for Cleveland at this point, knowing that likely Watson's gone for the year, to maybe take a run at Jimmy G? Or
yeah, I don't know. Like, I think they gave up too much when they went for Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, well,
right?
What was
like,
number one? Yeah.
That's going to be the thing, though, right? If they think Jimmy G can get them the Super Bowl, because they do have a pretty decent team around them, like you guys were saying. But I don't know. Like, if the thing I liked about Baker Mayfield is there wasn't 31 other quarterbacks that were better than him.
Yeah.
Right? And it's like I was surprised when they went for Deshaun Watson, but yeah.
You know, it was really, it was just that I've never seen a team make a move that desperate before. Caleb, how do you assess Cleveland? Like, you know, like Matt was saying, there's so much talent there. You've got, you know, possibly 6 to 8 Pro Bowlers on that roster if they stay healthy. But are they just in a situation where this is the Browns being the Browns, and they're going to find a way to screw this up?
I mean, it is a little bit of the Browns being the Browns for sure. But, you know, I think, you know, you're talking about the value of the quarterback position, you know, just to have, you know, hope of elite play or game impacting play, you know, from your quarterback is what the Browns are going for. And I think they're willing to wait. I personally don't think it's going to be an entire year. I know that's what they're going for. But I think the players union would, you know, pitch a fit if that happened, and they'd probably win, you know, at least reel some of those games back. So I'm not thinking that it's going to be a full year, but I mean, that's an elite defense there. As long as they have a serviceable quarterback, you know, I think they'll be fine for the time that he's out. I think, what was it, 6 games for sure?
Yeah,
right?
6 games for sure. Yeah,
they'd be okay. We get into you know, 12 games, you know, which is where I think it might actually come out 10, 12 games. I mean, yeah, how are you going to win those with just defense? You know, you know, you need a good quarterback. And who do they got? Jacoby Brissett is who they is.
Yeah,
right now?
Jacoby Brissett, and then after that, it's just nothing but journeyman.
Especially in that division too. I mean, you're that division is so strong that like you need him back. If you're going to try to win games this year, you're going to want, hopefully, think if you're a Browns fan, he's not gone the entire year.
Well, Jacoby Brissett has spent time with
the Colts, yeah,
right, and he kind of played almost the same role.
Yeah,
It was decent, and it was serviceable. Yeah,
he's serviceable. No knock on Jacoby. If you look at his numbers, I mean, he's almost got a 2-to-1 touchdown interception ratio, I believe. The problem is he's not a big armed quarterback. He's not very good on third downs. And, he doesn't have a very good career record, the most important thing you look at it. But like you said, Matt, with Nick Chubb and all those pieces, all you need is a game manager. And that's something Jimmy G could be. Somebody who's not going to turn the ball over. Someone who's not going to throw 4 interceptions in a must-win game like, Baker Mayfield did last year against the Packers in a game that they had to have to make the playoffs. All you need is a guy just not to screw it up. And that's really the definition of Jimmy G. This is a guy who's gone to a Super Bowl, has gone to an NFC Championship game just by keeping your team on the field, and not blowing the game. So that from that perspective, I think it's worth Cleveland taking a look at it. I know they've given away basically their first rounders for probably the next quarter of a century. It's going to seem, but you don't want to dip even further into your draft resources. But in a situation like this, I think they have to, because even if that suspension gets knocked down, I think at the very minimum it gets knocked down to 8 games.
Well, with what you were saying about Jimmy Garoppolo, you can also say the exact same thing about Jacoby Brissett. He's a handler, a game maintenance guy.
Yeah.
Nothing outstanding, but he doesn't throw interceptions. Of course, he doesn't throw the ball past 20 yards down the field either. But what you were saying about Cleveland's ownership, the only thing I figure they're looking forward to is I think they still hold the patent on the Mistake by the Lake t-shirts. And they decided they're going to go for it again. And they're going to get those things going again. And that's how they're going to make their money. Because I'm with Caleb. I think that the NFL is not going to stop until they at least double that suspension, minimum of 12 games. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a good possibility he's out for a year.
Yeah.
And I mean, hey, if nothing else, he's going to keep the team happy because you can always take him for a massage.
Yeah.
Well,
and then Steve, you hit the thing on that. I worry about this becoming an issue for him in the future. I don't think he's rehabbed. We don't know if he's gone to therapy. Obviously, when you're accused by 20 women of sexual impropriety, you've got a problem. I can think this is going to be an issue for him in Cleveland as well.
I don't know. I don't think Cleveland's got quite a good look at masseuses. But hey, I haven't been to Cleveland in a long time. So.
Hey, it's a lot better than what it was 10 years ago. They've done better. This downtown actually looks better now.
Absolutely, Matt. You could call that the LeBron effect.
He absolutely needs to be careful then. So.
Guys, before we call the night, let's go around the horn. Parting shots. Anything on your mind? Anything you want to get out to our great viewers before we call the night?
I don't. The Hall of Fame game is tomorrow, and I got the Hall of Fame game. That was last week. I'm sorry. The Field of Dream games tomorrow. Yeah, and I get it. It's between the Reds and the Cubs, 2 teams that are struggling this year. Mm-hmm. But I saw a very cool tweet earlier because I was like, because there's preseason games on tomorrow for football.
Yeah.
I'm like, why would I want to watch the Cubs and the Reds? I mean, I'm from Chicago. I lived in Cincinnati for 7 years. I guess that alone would make me want to watch it. But I saw Joey Votto tweet something out earlier today. And he goes, I'm watching Field of Dreams right now just to get myself ready to be the kid. It's something in the kid of me of how excited I am. And then all of these people tweeting back at Joey Votto are like, we grew up wanting to go to the Field of Dreams and watching that movie and stuff like that. I'm like, man, that's a reason right there just to watch it tomorrow, because there's going to be so many people, both fan bases, they're going to want to watch that game tomorrow just for the history alone. So I think that's
absolutely. Cool. Like Matt said, guys, if you ever get a chance to make a mech out there, I highly recommend it, because just like Matt says, that field will make you feel like 7 years ago. Or you're 7 years old again. It will make you want to play catch with your dad. There's a magic there. And that game last year, White Sox, Yankees, that incredible back and forth, just baseball opera, that ends on the Tim Anderson walk off into the corn. That was the most exciting baseball game I can remember since Game 7 of the 2016 World Series, Cubs Indians. There's a magic out there. I know this sounds cliche. I know it sounds corny, But it really is a very special place. If you ever get a chance, guys, I highly recommend it. And I agree with Matt. Tomorrow, I mean, you got two teams that are probably combined 50 games under 500. But the possibility of baseball magic is there just because of the theater, of the environment, and the sense of wonder that field has. So my parting shot, guys, if you ever get a chance, you owe it to yourself as a sports fan to try to make a Mac out there. And with that, guys, let's wrap. Anybody else have anything they want to add before we call the night, guys?
Yeah, hey, I'm just going to give a real quick Lee Corso style, not so fast on the White Sox. They took the lead. They're trying to give it back almost almost single-handedly is trying to give it back. But White Sox are, if they're good at anything, they're good at playing close baseball. I'll leave it at that. Stay tuned.
Absolutely. Let's hold that open on the Sox. Guys, this has been a pleasure. The great Steve Weekly, Cal Bolton, Matt Cooper, Caleb James. These are the monsters of the Madhouse. I'm Clete Campbell, folks. It's been an honor, privilege having you with us this week. Please be back with us next Wednesday, 8:30. Well, we've got our main man, Brandon Hyatt, running point again. Thanks again. You have a great night, folks. This is the Monsters of the Madhouse, signing off.
Even when you feel low, you can still go. Even when you feel slow, you can still go. Even when there's no hope, you can still go. I never answer to no, man, I still go. Go, 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 go. Hustle hard, hustle every single day. I'll be making moves till I'm buried in my grave. To the system, I don't wanna be a slave. I've been doing shit my way, or the highway. And in the driveway is a nice range. Cause I grind through the climb, I invite pain. You'll never hear me, bitch, nah, I don't complain. Just gotta flip the switch and you can go and obtain. And